Hello, and welcome to this edition of People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Gerst. I've been hiring, firing, and mentoring executives, frontline employees, interns, and job seekers in companies around the world through a host of transitions, some difficult, but most very good. I work with people in Hong Kong, India, Australia, and across the United States. What sets them apart? A lot, but there's more they have in common. And one of those commonalities is transition is a part of life. This experience has given me a bird's eye view on a variety of trends, economies, industry disruptors, and transitions that are big and small. It also brought me into contact with the thought leaders and decision makers you need to meet, the people who can make the difference that matters to you right now. Imagine knowing exactly what to do next and how to know it's time to make your big change. The insight track you're going to access during our future episodes is better than a crystal ball. It's the exact information you need to take that next step. Whether you're a new grad applying for your first professional job, someone looking to transition your work experience into a promotion, launching your own company, or maybe even starting to plan your retirement, you're in transition, and this series is for you. We all know transition can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And it's even fun when you have VIP access to the future you want. Are you tired of the uncertainty of being passed up? We'll share with you the tools and skills that can take your dreams to the front of the line. So, if change is on your horizon, or maybe just the thought of change, you won't want to miss this discussion. It could be the exact edge you need to turn transition into an amazing opportunity. Susan Howington, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of People in Transition. I'm so excited about having the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you, Bob. I'm really happy to be with you today. I appreciate the invitation to come on your podcast.
So, Susan, when you were younger, what did you want to be when you, and I'm using air quotes here, when you grew up?
Yeah, I feel very fortunate in that I always knew what I wanted to be when I was a little girl. And as I grew and got older and went through my educational process and that sort of thing, my direction and focus was always there. I just didn't know exactly what you called this thing that I wanted to do. And what I thought I wanted to be, Bob, was a psychiatrist. But then as I got older and I was going through school and going to college, I learned that it was a social worker that I wanted to be. I really wanted to be in social work. I wanted to improve people's lives, their lives as they're living. And I don't know that that makes sense to anybody but me, but I didn't want to talk about people's feelings and their early childhood so much. I wanted to physically help them in their living spaces and survive and provide for their families. And in actuality, I did that for a little while. Right out of college, I got a bachelor's degree in sociology with an extended major in psychology. And I got into drug and alcohol counseling. And I worked with all the different agencies, all the social services, the police force, all these things. And for not wanting to go too much into detail and go on too long, Bob, I realized I was much too young at 22 years old to be so serious about life. So I opted out of that line of work, and I got a business opportunity to join a tech company. And through different positions in this tech space, I found my way, and I gravitated more into customer service and marketing and sales. And I loved everything about what I was learning about business. Now, there's another part of me growing up that was also very intentional in that I loved business when I was even a little kid. And I dreamed about being a business owner and being the president of my company. And I think I got that from coming from an entrepreneurial family. So I had these two tracks. And then as I got into the corporate world, I was contacted by a recruiter who told me about the outplacement industry. And honestly, it was like this major big flash of light came on in my mind thinking, oh my gosh, this could be for me, because it's about helping people, and it's also about learning about business and what people do in their business lives. And that was it for me. I've been in this space ever since. So it's been a little over 20 years now. And I'm right where I need to be. I love it and I'm good at it. And I love seeing how people's lives have been improved because we've helped them through a difficult time in their life. And we're helping their families. We're helping them provide for their families. We're helping them advance their careers. And it's just a wonderful place to be. So I know that might have been a little bit more than you asked for, but I really do know how to answer that question. I have a real story that the paths led to this place for me.
Susan, for some of our listeners that maybe don't understand outplacement as well, maybe kind of describe what it is and what happens if you don't have an outplacement firm provided to you. What should you do?
Good question. So outplacement is a benefit that companies provide employees that have been separated, terminated, have been impacted through a reduction in force. Maybe there's been an acquisition and two companies have been integrated together. So there's a redundancy in roles, and they've got they don't need two of, let's say, two CFOs or two finance people. So one leaves, and as a part of the benefits of a severance package, a company will pay for an outplacement firm to help that individual with their resume, their LinkedIn profile, their interviewing skills, their job search strategy, give them all kinds of support, interview training, and also salary negotiations, all the things that encompass the job search. An outplacement program can provide in terms of support to an individual. So that's what outplacement is. Outplacement is a true gift. It really is. And it's so wonderful to know that companies are concerned about those outgoing employees, that they want to help them get launched into their next job. So if your company provides it for you, I would strongly encourage that you engage in it, you take advantage of it, because it can only help you. If they don't provide outplacement for you, then I would seek out a firm that might provide services to individuals so that you can invest in it personally, because it will make a difference. And Bob, I think you know that when people are in transition or their job has been terminated and they didn't expect it at all, boy, it really puts your brain into a funk. It's difficult to know what to do. What do I do now? And of course, you're bombarded with all these pieces of advice from people and telling you what you need to do and what is your resume, what's it supposed to look like, what's LinkedIn, how do you look for a job online? I mean, there's a lot to learn. So a career transition coach, like those on my team, like myself and on my team, we can help people know what to do step by step by step. And that allows people to feel more comfortable, more control, and also much more productive in their search.
Susan, you have a new book. It's entitled How Smart People Sabotage Their Job Search, the 10 Mistakes Executives Make and How to Fix Them. I just love that title, by the way.
Thank you. It's a mouthful.
Can you give our listeners kind of a brief summary of some of those points that you make in the book? Tease them maybe in terms of their utilizing that book.
Sure. Thanks for asking this question too. It's a favorite topic of mine. And the reason I wrote this book, and I don't consider myself an author, but I wrote the book because I've been doing this a long time and I have a lot to share with people. And I thought writing a book is a great way to put it all together. And if someone were to read it, they'd get a lot of my thoughts and advice. The book itself is actually stories of my experiences working with people in transition through the years. And not necessarily executives, but I will say I put the word executive in the title of the book because I wanted to make sure executives read it. But this book can be read and appreciated by people of all levels. But what I've found through the years is that executives make the same silly mistakes as anybody else does. So I wanted to make sure that they read it. And so some of the mistakes or the chapters are the various mistakes, and there are 10 that I talk about. For example, one of the chapters, it's mistake number 2, is we make it hard for others to feel good about helping us. Now, you say, well, what does that mean? We tend to overburden people with our plight to find a job. We tend to put the onus on others to help us investigate positions in a company that we're interested in working for. We tend to overload people with information about who we are, or we don't give them enough information and we assume that they know how to help us. Anyway, there's lots of different things that we can do that overloads our network, and it just confuses people. And not to mention, they begin to resent us because we feel as though we're working for them. So that's one of the mistakes. We sabotage our search before we're even out of a job by being rude to service provider. And I've been a service provider for over 20 years. So I myself have been a victim of this over and over and over again. I'll have a corporate customer who is rude to me or treats me poorly as a vendor, considers me quote unquote a vendor versus a partner in business, or as a resource. They're disrespectful to me. And yet, when they're out of work, guess who they're calling and asking for advice and help? It's me. And I don't feel good about that. I resent that. And it's hurtful to me, because what happens next is they find a job and then they return to that old behavior. Well, do that more than once to service providers, and they don't forget, because we all talk to each other, number one. And number 2, we're going to be less apt to help somebody who's treated us poorly. So it's those kinds of stories in here, and they're very practical. And Bob, it isn't anything that no one has ever said before. It's just the way in which I say it, I think, is a little bit different. Again, they're real life stories, so it's going to give people the actual practical things that are going on so they can look at themselves and think, you know what, I may be guilty of this one. Or, no, I do that one really well. That's it in a nutshell.
The good news is, for most of us, our real sweet spot, our real skill set is not in looking for a new job. Thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
And so any support, any help that we can get along the way, I always think is good support, good help. So thank you for that. You used this line before, or this phrase, job search strategy.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, I've talked with enough people in transition, and their line is I just want to find a job.
Right.
And they've probably never articulated a job search strategy. What does that term mean to you?
It means a lot in that it starts with actually knowing what position you want. And that seems very like common sense. But you'd be surprised at how many people aren't really sure. Because they're afraid to put themselves in a box because they think it's going to limit their chances of finding work. But it's just the opposite. Because what happens is that if you don't tell your network what it is that you're looking for, they don't know what to watch for on your behalf. They don't know how to define the space that you belong in. And that's so unproductive for you and for the efforts of other people. So first strategy is really knowing what job you want. And I'm not talking about saying, well, I want a job in finance. I want a job in marketing. Okay, that's the first step. But where in finance do you belong? Where in marketing do you fit? What's the focus? The second thing is you need to have an understanding of what sort of company do you want to approach. It's called coming up with a target list. Again, people say, well, I can work in any company. Just put me in that role and I can learn it and I'll do fine. I'll blend in, I'll learn. That again it sounds great and good for you. And I'm sure that's true with many people, but it's not helpful in your search efforts. You have to know why you want to work in a certain company. And by the way, the industry is also critical. What industry do you want to approach? Where do you fit in? Where are your interests? And go beyond interests. Define what skill sets, what accomplishments do you have that make you a good fit for that industry? So there's job role as part of strategy. There is what companies you'd like to target and work for, and what industries make sense for you. And the more you define these elements, the faster you're going to move. You're going to get more momentum in a quicker length of time. You'll be much more effective and productive. It just works that way. So that's part of the whole job search strategy conversation.
Susan, you talk about when you're laid off, when you get notified that your brain is in a funk for a while. Mm-hmm. And I totally agree with that. If I have access to you as a transition coach, what will you tell me to help me deal with that brain funk? And then secondarily, if I don't have access to you, how do I self-medicate that brain funk?
Yeah, well, talking with a career transition coach can really help someone clear their head, because we're going to have a constructive conversation about the realities of what has happened to the person, the realities of the job market, the realities of what their search is going to look like and what they need to do. And just having that kind of conversation with somebody, it's sort of medication. It's soothing, it's informative, and in many cases, many times it's encouraging. That's the benefit that you receive from talking to a career transition coach. If you can't have that conversation with someone, then I think the best thing that you can do is to build your network. Start to talk to people you know, former business contacts, peers, associates, and start getting the word out that you're looking for your next position. Because job search, it's all about networking. That's a huge component to getting your next job, but it's always an individual sport, and it can be very, very lonely. So interacting with other people is very important to our mental health during search. Now, I want to just go back a tiny bit to the brain funk. There have been times when I've told people, I use the term sit on the beach, when I've told people they need to do a proverbial sit on the beach for a while. Take some time to process, think, and relax your mind, if you can. And I don't mean for months. I mean for, 10 days, 2 weeks, and then get started. Start your search. Start to put one foot in front of the other, because in the long run, you're going to feel better about your situation, better about your life.
Susan, you've talked about your network a number of times. How do you engage that network? Give me some words, give me some lines, give me some things that I should use, because I'm an introvert. I'm a little bit frightened, quite frankly, in approaching them. And what if they turn me down? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, networking is probably the most challenging aspect of a job search for introverts and for others as well. Very few people enjoy the networking aspect in the beginning. So if you are an introvert and you are really reticent about connecting with people and telling them that you're out of work, here's some input. First of all, it's really important that you go back to your networking, your job search strategy. Know what you want to say to people. And that's usually encapsulated in an elevator speech. As you go through your job search process, you might hear people say, well, what's your elevator pitch? What's your elevator speech? Well, that is referring to the presentation, quote unquote, that you're making about yourself, what it is you're looking for, and where do you want to go to find that work. So structure that. Script it out. I am all for scripts. Structure what you're going to say to people if you're going to call them or text them or send an email. Know what you're going to say and stick to the script. That's your comfort, is that script. What people find, Bob, during job search, it's an amazing process in this regard, that most people you reach out to are very happy to hear from you. They are open, they care, they want to support you, but what they need from you is to tell them how to help you. So that's where that script comes in. So for introverts, the scripting of what you want to say is really, really helpful.
How do you think today recruiters, hiring managers react when they find out you've been laid off?
Years and years ago, it was there was a real stigma to being let go. It was terrible. But things have changed. Times have changed. Everything has changed. Has it not? I mean, everything has changed. And so being separated from a company, being apart, being caught up in a reduction in force, being in the middle of the integration of two companies that have been, that have merged, or one company acquired another company, that's a common business dynamic. It's happening all the time. What I will sometimes tell our clients who they really are concerned about the stigma of being let go, I tell them authentically, congratulations, you're part of the club. And there's a lot of people just like you who are part of this club, and you're going to find that people will be very empathetic and want to help you through it. So I wouldn't worry too much about being let go. You can move through it, and there are better things waiting for you.
I heard the line given to someone that was in transition: refuse to feel sorry for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
This can be a positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean, and how do you use that when you're going through transition yourself?
Well, it's hard to tell people how to feel because everybody is different, and some people have the being let go has literally had a severe impact on their lives and their family's life, and it's put them in a real negative life situation. But as I think we can all agree that if you stay in that place of feeling sorry for yourself, it typically immobilizes you as well. And the last thing you want to be when you need to be looking for work is be immobilized. That would be my biggest fear, is that I am immobilized because my emotions have overcome me. So job search is a job in itself, and you need the energy to work hard at it. And even if working hard means taking little baby steps every morning, take those baby steps, because a baby step will lead to another one, and so on and so forth. So feeling energetic is super important to the success of a job search. And so I hate to see anyone stay too long in feeling sorry or being depressed. Not a good place to be.
Susan, if you were to give 3 tips
Mm-hmm.
on how to make the interview itself a better experience, a more positive experience, whether it's, as many of us do today, over Zoom, but we still have lots of in-person interviews as well, what would
Mm-hmm.
be the 3 interview tips that you would pass on?
Well, the first tip I would pass on is be prepared for the interview. Now, that's, again, sounds like common sense. But when I say be prepared, I mean, I want you to go onto that company's website. I want you to Google any news about that company. I want you to research the people that you're going to be speaking to. Go on LinkedIn, find out who they are, what their background is. I want you to know who the competitors are. I want you to learn as much as you can about that company, because that knowledge will come through. And I don't mean you're going to be able to spout off all this information that you now know and look like you know it all, because that can offend the interviewer. But it will sort of ooze out of you that you know who you're talking to and you know the business. So it will give you confidence. The second thing is, so many interviews, even before we experienced the pandemic, so many interviews were being conducted by phone, many phone interviews before you'd actually be able to see someone. Well, now we're doing it, via Zoom and other medium. It's very important that you learn Zoom techniques and interview techniques where you are on a screen. It's really important. And having eye contact, making sure your face is lit up, because we're still human beings and we need to see each other to connect. And connecting, we need to show that we're interested with our eyes. We need to show that we can smile, that we're nodding our head, in agreement, or showing that we understand. So learn how to show up on the screen. And then the third thing is be relatable with others. And that's where allowing them to see your face, showing that you understand their business. Maybe after you've looked them up on LinkedIn, you saw that they went to your school. I went to Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. They're the lumberjacks. Not a lot of people graduated from NAU. So whenever I find somebody, we always, it always creates a smile and it always creates a connection. So try to find some commonality with your interviewer. So that would be the third tip.
Even on Zoom, that nonverbal communication can be an important element that I think that people oftentimes overlook.
Yes, they do.
I did some interviewing with the Blue Man Group, and one of the techniques that they use is to see how they communicate just using their eyes, no words whatsoever.
Interesting.
Some of my clients that I deal with that are in transition, they have that first letdown, and then they get kind of engaged and kind of energized, and so they're on an upswing. And then if it takes a period of time, a few months, they go down the roller coaster. And that's almost harder at that time to re-energize, re-engage. And I have found it sometimes difficult to get them propped back up and get them back going. Have you seen that kind of roller coaster of emotion? And how have you helped clients of yours deal with that roller coaster?
Oh boy, I have I ever seen that roller coaster? And there are some clients where I just think to myself, boy, if I were that person, I don't know how I could keep my chin up after what they've experienced and the disappointments they've had and all the energy they've put into things. So I really do empathize and sympathize with people who are truly experiencing the highs, the very highs, and then those very lows. I try to remain encouraging. I am realistic with them, though. I'm not one for throwing out superlatives. I don't know that that's effective. I just try to show people that I understand. I've been in this role myself for many, many years. I've seen people just like them make it through and find better jobs than they had even ever imagined. And most people do, Bob. I found that most people do find great jobs, and they're very happy with the end results of that torturous journey. At the end, they're delighted and they can say, this is the job I've been waiting for. So I just try to remain encouraging and yet practical with people. I always let people know that I'm their biggest fan. Through thick and thin, they can always count on me to be their biggest fan. And not everybody has a big fan at home, as you probably know. So to know that you have a fan that's always there for you during this trying time, it's an important role for them.
I've not seen the statistic, but just from my experience in talking with others, many people, as you just described, find better next positions. But I have yet, after doing this for decades, I have yet to have anyone that has not found a job. Even though it looks like a black cliff that you're going to jump off, really isn't. I think that's important to keep in mind.
Yes, absolutely.
Susan, any books or other resources that you would recommend, other than your own, of course, to help someone as they're going through this transition?
I always recommend that people become avid readers while they're in transition. I suggest that if they don't subscribe to some business journals of some kind, that they subscribe or they keep a real watch on, online articles about business and what's happening in the world, what's happening in their line of work. I highly recommend the Wall Street Journal. I read the Wall Street every day, and then I read the local newspaper here in Southern California. It's important that you be able to show those that you are interviewing with and those that you're networking with that you are in step with what's going on in the world and in business. And it makes you feel better too. And it gives your brain something to focus in on and learn and grow. I recommend that people read the news. I also recommend that people go online, do Kindle or whatever works for you. I still like to get a book from Amazon or Barnes and Noble. I like books, but read business books or read books about skill development. There is so much online, as you know, Bob, about how to find a job. You can go online and find anything you want to know about finding a job. And for the most part, it's good advice. Some might be just very redundant and basic, but it's all there. But keeping your brain alive, fresh, developing your ideas, developing your skill sets, that's super important.
Susan, if you were to leave our listeners with 3 things that they need to do while they're in transition, what are the 3 things, the key things that you would coach them to remember?
3 things. First one is have your resume done professionally. Spend the money or research well-written resumes. Spend the time. It's absolutely important and it's critical. And by the way, that resume needs to have keywords in there that companies that are looking for someone like you, the words that they would use to describe the role that you play. Number 2, have your LinkedIn profile developed professionally because people are found through LinkedIn. Job leads are found through LinkedIn. Recruiters and employment agencies find candidates through LinkedIn. And number 3, this goes back to something that I talked about earlier. Have a well thought out and well crafted elevator speech. Know what it is you want to do specifically, what industry you're in, what geography, if you don't care where the job is, say that in your elevator speech. You're open to relocation, or you want to move back east, or you want to move to the Southwest, whatever it is that you want. Put it in that elevator speech because the more clear you are about what you want going forward, the better able people are to help you get that next job.
Susan, after listening to you, I understand why you were selected as one of the 15 Orange County women who inspire others. You inspire me. You helped inform me. You helped, I'm sure, engage and educate people who are in transition. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, Susan.
Bob, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure and honor to talk to you today.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We're working in unprecedented times as the world responds to the recent COVID-19 crisis. The fact is that even those who are not in transition understand it could be right around the corner, next month, or a year from now. The purpose of these episodes are to give listeners support and the critical tools to adjust with the winds, wherever they come. I'll continue to introduce you to guests who have successfully, perhaps gracefully or without too many battle scars, survived their own obstacle courses, and can share useful information on how to steady your ship or your world in this uncertainty. If today's message was helpful to you, please share it on social media. If you have any questions or podcast ideas for future conversations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I appreciate your time you're investing in sharing these important conversations with me, my guests, and others who are going through life transition. Transitions between jobs, life stages, new entrepreneurial ventures, or whatever life brings. Change is constant. The more prepared you are for it, the better and easier the change will occur. Thank you again. This is your host, Bob Gerst. See you at our next episode of People in Transition.